let's go ahead and program this. And so what I want to do is I want to test the whiskers. Since I already have my buzzer on there, my piezo speaker, or my piezo speaker, what I want to do is I just want to write a program that will read the whiskers, and it will beep whenever it sees either the left or the right actually go. Alright, so let's do the following. I'm going to come into my Arduino folder, or actually no, what I'm going to do is I'm going to start the Arduino development environment, and then I'll start a new project. Okay, so I've got myself my Arduino sketch, and I am going to, first things first, I'm going to save, and this will put it, I want to put it right into my working directory that we've been working on my desktop. So I come to desktop, Arduino, and I'm going to call this chapter 5 activity 1, and that corresponds to the parallax tutorial where all these images and ideas are coming from. And I'm going to call this whisker test. Okay? Alright, so we have our whisker test and we're ready to go. So let's go in here and see what we need to do. So the first thing that we want to do is let us do the following. First thing I'm going to do is I'm going to print I'm going to set up my serial monitor. So I'm going to do serial.begin, and I always want to do this just to make sure that I'm running running my actual program. So I go ahead and do that, and then I'm going to do a serial dot print line. I'm going to say starting whisker test program. Okay, and then I know that my program is actually running. Alright, now first thing I want to do is I am going to set up the whiskers. Now, if you recall from prior videos, the way that you do this is we need to set up the digital input, or I/O, as an input and use the pin mode function. Okay, so pin mode is how we set up the pin, and on pin 5 we are going to make it an input, and pin 5 is going to correspond to the left whisker, and I'll put a comment there just so I can make sure. And then pin mode, pin 7 is also going to be an input and that's going to be the right whisker. And when you start playing with this, you'll see how the whiskers actually crisscross, and so the left whisker is going to hit the upper 3-pin header, which is attached to, let's see here, they do crisscross. And let's see, okay, so I think that is right. Yep, they crisscross. Okay. Okay, so now they're set up. It's like, all right, now what? Well, what we want to do is we want to read from them. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to do a couple things to make sure that I'm actually working right here. Is I'm going to read from the pin, and then I'm going to look at the value of it, and I'm going to say, okay, if it's not pressed, don't do anything, but if it is pressed, play a tone and also write it to the screen. Okay, alright, so let's go ahead and remember how you do a digital read. Well, actually, I don't know if we've covered that. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to do a data type called byte, and I'm going to define w left, and this is a user-defined term that I'm using. Okay, so this is, I'm making up w left. Now, byte is going to be the type of this new variable. Okay, and then on the same line, I can actually use the function digital read. And now what it's going to do is it's going to go out and it's going to go to what pin number I give in the argument. So this right here will come down, and when it's executed, it will go grab the value on pin 5, which is our left whisker, and it's going to assign it to this new variable that I have, which is called w-left, and the type of w-left is byte. Okay, all right, and so the value of w-left is either going to be a 1 or it's going to be a 0. Now we know that the pin itself is just a single bit, right? It's just a 1 or a 0, high or low, but we can't have a binary data type. We can only have in chunks of 8 bits at a time, so that's why we have to do byte. But it doesn't matter because the value, all the other bits within the 8 bits here are just going to be zeros. So the value of this w left will either be a 0, which is 0, 0, 0, 0, 0, 0, 0, 0, or it'll be 1, which is 0, 0, 0, 0, 0, 0, 0, 1. Okay? Okay, so I got it. All right, so I read that and I stuffed it in that variable. And notice that I'm in this loop, so I'm just going to continually read that thing. Well, let's go ahead and read our other guy. Let's do our right whisker, which is on pin 7. And we'll come in here and we'll make that a W right. And I've read them. Okay, so life is good. Now you say, well, what do you do with this stuff? Well, why don't we print these to the screen and take a look at what this might look like. So I'm going to do the following. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to do serial.print, and I can just do W left, and that's going to print either a 0 or a 1 to the screen of what left is. Notice I'm not going to put a return on there, because then I'll come right after it and I'll do a serial print W right. And what this should do is just print 0s and 1s, and it'll continually do this. And let me put a little delay in here, so I'll delay 50. And let's go ahead, save this, and compile it, make sure that everything is okay. So while that's compiling, I'll bring over the monitor here. Let's see. Alright, so it's going to compile. And we're almost ready, and then we'll download this baby. Waiting for it. Okay, looks okay. So now I download this program. Okay, so I'm going to come over here, and okay, so check this out. It's going crazy. It's writing all these on the same line. Let's go ahead and put a return after this so it's a little easier to see. I want it to scroll vertically, so let's save that up. And once you get the first program on here, it seems to go a little bit faster. So now I'm going to do this. Alright, and here we go. So it's going to print left and right. Okay, so starting whisker. Now look at what's happening. So it's going 1, 1, 1, 1, 1. Now, here's what's cool about this. I'm going to show you a few things. So first of all, here's mine. Okay, and this is my left whisker, and if the camera's a little, might have this flip, but if I press that, notice what happens is that the left column goes to 0. That's because, remember, these are being pulled up normally with the resistors, and when I push it, I short it to ground or make it a low. And I can actually do both right and left. And I want to show you something also interesting. You need to have the power for this to work on, let's see here. See that you need to have this +5 strip up here on, so your power switch has to be in at least the 1 position, or position 1, because if it's in 0, look at what happens. I turn that to 0 and all the zeros go to, or all the values go to 0, and it's because what I've done is I've turned off that +5 on there, so it's essentially is unpowered, so it's not able to pull it to a 1. So these whiskers really only work if you have the power to that little +5 strip in there. Okay, so that's pretty neat. Let's go ahead and throw a tone in here. Now this, we're not even doing anything. All we're doing is just looking at, we're just printing left and right. But let's go ahead and put this in a decision statement, and we'll use our tone function that we played with a little bit last time. But this if-then structure is really neat because we can use this going forward to kind of make decisions based upon these whiskers. So here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to come right here and I'm going to say if, and I'm going to open up a little statement right here. And what I want to do is I want to say if W left equals, now and it's double equals is a comparison. So if it's a 0, that means the left was pressed. Okay. And I'm going to put that within its own parentheses so that's really obvious what I'm doing. So it's like if W left, bah. Then I'm going to say and then I'm going to say W left, or excuse me, I'm going to say W right is equal to a 1. What I have essentially coded is the following. This means that left was pressed. Okay? So remember, left is, if it goes to a 0, that means that the left whisker was hit with something. And then what I'll do is I'll open up curly brackets and I'm going to do something. So what do I want to do? Let's play a tone using the tone function, and the piezo speaker is still on pin 4, and let's play a 1000 hertz tone for something small like 50 milliseconds, and I tell it to go for 50 and stop after 50, but I want to delay 50 to let it actually have time to do it. And check that out. I mean, how awesome is that? All right, so now what? Why don't we put another tone that's a different frequency if you happen to have the right one pressed? So the way that you do that is I do an else statement after this, and I'm going to copy this entire segment right there, and I come down here and I go else, and then I pop my if there. And at this situation, what I want to do is I want to see that the left was not pressed, it was the actual right pressed. Okay, so now this one is going to be, I'll put my comment on here as right pressed. And so then if the right whisker was pressed, what I want to do is let's play a tone, but let's play a different tone. So let's play 2 kilohertz, okay? And then finally, let's do the exact same thing where I'm going to do a third else if. And in this situation, both of them are pressed, which is perfectly valid. But this time, I'm going to make, so it's 0 and 0 is the condition, and my comment will be both pressed. And let's play a tone that's like 3000. And what we can do is we can go through this if-then statement, and we'll still print the values out, so that's fine. But let's go ahead and save this up, and let's download this, and let's see what happens now. Okay, so it looks like it's going to compile okay. And I'm sitting here. And it's off, okay? So now let's go ahead and press the left whisker. Do you hear that? So you can hear. Okay, so my left whisker, that's a kilohertz. Then here's my right whisker. A little higher. I'll pull this up to my... So now, how about both of them? So left, right, both. So we did it. So this is great because you can see how you can, other than giving us some sort of feedback on what's actually happening, you can see how you use these if-then statements to actually do something cool and make decisions. What's neat about this is now we can actually use these whiskers to direct something such as motion of the robot, and we can actually use it for navigation. So at this point, this would be a good thing to do is go ahead and after you got your whiskers on here, go ahead and write these programs and play around with just experimenting on how much force it takes and getting the program to actually work. And go ahead.